Hi everybody, welcome to this week's video. We're going to be looking at rose pruning today. It's the middle of March, the weather is starting to get better now. We've got some sunny days and less frosty cold nights, so it's a good time to be getting on with this job. This week I have been pruning all my roses in the garden. The weather has been really nice to do that, and I've kept some of the offcuts to show you some of the different things that I found as I've been pruning, and we're going to have a look at that just now. I've got some branches here that you can see are brown and diseased and damaged, and these are ones to take off at the base or as far down as the brown stem is going until you get to healthy wood again. And I've got some healthier ones to show you the difference here. So if we have a look a little bit closer, you can see what I'm talking about. So here we've got brown stems. These are dead, and I would need to take them off at the base if that's where it extends to with the brown wood, or far enough back that I have got into a nice green stem again. And here you can have a look and see this is a healthy stem, and on the inside it's got white pith inside it, and this is nice and healthy and what you're looking for when you've made your pruning cut. And if we have a look at the end of the dead wood here, it looks quite different on the inside. It's brown on the inside, that's not healthy. So you want to look for white pith, and anything that is looking brown and damaged, diseased on the inside or dead, you want to remove. Sometimes on a rose you will find that it's got a bit of dieback on it, so it will be brown in a section of it and then it will be green underneath. And you want to take a pruning cut below this brown section back to white healthy tissue on the inside, like we just saw on the stem a minute ago. So you just take a pruning cut below where the brown is, and then you would find that it's back to nice white healthy tissue again. Sometimes you find that your stems might look a bit damaged. This one here, we'll have a closer look in a second. It has been crossing with another branch and has got a little bit damaged here. So if we have a closer look at this, here you can see this is a branch where it has got damaged by two stems rubbing against each other. So to prevent this, at pruning time, we cut out our crossing stems. Sometimes it's not all that easy to know where to make your pruning cuts. It's okay on stems that have really nice big fat buds that are just bursting into growth, but sometimes your stems don't appear to have a bud at all. So where do you make your pruning cuts then? So here on this stem you can see a very obvious bud here, and that makes it nice and easy to know where to do our pruning cut. We would just take it to 1/4 of an inch above this here and make our cut there. On this stem it's not quite so easy to see where the buds are. We're looking at a dormant bud here, so you can just see the line there and the tiny little nodule coming out the side of the stem, and this is a dormant bud which will burst into life soon. So you're wanting to make your pruning cut up to 1/4 of an inch above that dormant bud. But what happens if you have a stem and you can't see on it a bud at all? Sometimes that does happen, it's just not very obvious. And in that case we want to go back to the pruning heights of our roses. So in the case of our hybrid tea roses, you're looking at wanting to prune them up to about 15 centimetres, up to about 6 inches. If it was a floribunda rose, you'd be looking to prune up to about 30 centimetres from the base. And if it was a shrub rose, you'd be wanting to reduce the overall height by about 1/3. So in this case, just make your pruning cut at one of those heights and don't worry too much about finding a bud. Sometimes on a rose stem you will find that you get a thick section, which is absolutely fine. We want to keep this on the plant, and sometimes you might get a thinner section. And this stem here is less than a pencil width. It's a bit too small to keep on your plant, so I would be looking to remove this. When you've been pruning your roses, you may have heard about making an angled cut on them. And the theory behind this is that if you make an angled cut above your bud and you make it in a downward slope, then when it rains, the water will come on to the sloping cut and it will just run off and it won't get near that bud, it won't settle on it. The other school of thought on this one is that if it is raining, like it does a lot in Scotland, it is going to get that bud wet no matter what. So is there any point to making an angled cut? And I'd say that the jury is out on this one, and it's up to you to decide what you want to do. I would say that what I tend to do is to do an angled cut if it's nice and easy for me to do so, and I can access the stem nice and easily to do that. Sometimes if you have got a shrub rose that's really quite full full, there's lots of branches, lots going on, I find it more difficult to get my secateurs in to do an angled cut. So in that case, I might just go straight across. And if that's the case, if you do that, I wouldn't worry about it too much at all. The main thing is that you're doing the pruning and that you do it in the springtime now to get some new, healthy, good growth going on for the year to come. So when's a good time to prune your roses? We're now into mid-spring. We have got temperatures increasing overnight and there's not been any frost for a wee while. The sun has come out as well. So this is mid-March. You could prune slightly earlier if you're down south in England and the temperatures are warmer, so towards the end of February. But here in Scotland and in any cooler climate, you're really looking at doing it in March. You want to be pruning your roses when they're getting to the stage of new growth just starting to come. You can see buds are starting to come on the rose here, and this is the time to prune them before they've got into their full growth. And what we're looking for is we're looking to improve the overall health of the plant. We want to open it up so that there's good airflow going through. We want to remove any diseased or damaged branches that could be broken because of the wind and the storms in the winter time, or they might have been diseased from last year. You're going to need a few things for doing your rose pruning. So what I've got with me today is I've got my pair of secateurs here. Any will do, as long as they're nice and sharp to do a nice clean cut. And I've also got some cleaning antiseptic wipes here as well, so that I can just clean off my secateurs in between doing different roses so that you're not passing any disease on between them. I've also got an empty bucket here to pick up my rose clippings in. You don't want to be leaving these around the base of your plant or putting them on the compost heap because you might be spreading disease. So once I've pruned, I put all my rose clippings into here and then I transfer that into my green recycling bucket, which will then get taken away. I've got my gardening gloves and I've got some granular rose food as well. So once I have pruned, I will be sprinkling a handful of this around the base of each plant and working it into the soil. Then I will, don't know whether you can see, but I've got my watering can, so we'll give the rose a good water, and then I'm going to mulch over the top with some green compost. And that's all you need to do at this stage in the spring. Just give it a good prune, give it a water, give it some feed granular that'll be slow release over the next few months, and then give it some mulch with some good compost on the top. So we're now going to go and have a look at pruning this rose here. This is a hybrid tea rose, and I also grow floribunda roses. And here we can take them back quite hard at this time of year. So let's have a look and see what we've got. If we have a look, we have got some diseased and damaged wood here. This is dead wood. It's all brown and it needs to come away at the base. You can see here that this is a crossing stem, so we don't want any stems like that. So we're going to have to remove some wood there to just leave one. This is our dead and diseased damaged wood here. We're going to take that back. And then we're going to cut the whole rose bush back within a few buds of the base, just to let it come away and grow strongly. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to remove any dead and diseased branches at the base, these stems. So I'm just going to chop them off, and I'm going to get my bucket here to pop them in. So this one here as well, it's just going to get removed at the base, and this one as well is looking like that. So they're all going to just come out, and then I'm going to have a look. This one is crossing and we don't want it to do that. I'm going to have a look up to see where I think that there is a bud, and I can see something dormant there, but it is a bud. So I'm just going to make a sloping angled cut out the way there, and as you can see, it's nice and white there, so we know that that's not a diseased part of stem. That's a nice new one, and that will grow quite healthily. And it's now not got anything crossing, so that is a better shape. Now anything really small, so you can see here, anything that's thinner than a pencil really is not going to hold a good flower. It's not going to help with the growth of the plant. So we're going to take out anything that is really thin like that. And we're just going to take them out right at the stem there. And then this is leaving a reasonable, take that bit out there, it's leaving a reasonable stem. It's not that thick, but it's probably about pencil thickness. And I can see a nice outward facing bud here. So again, I'm going to prune there. And when we're looking at our buds, we're looking to prune at an outward facing bud, because that's just going to open up your rose and it's going to grow nicely out the way. If you pruned at an inward facing bud, then you'd be causing growth in the way into the plant, and that's going to make a more closed structure. We want a nice open structure where there's going to be good airflow. Now looking at this branch here, there's some nice buds there. There's a good bud coming at that point. And there are some more up here, but this is getting thinner in the plant. So I might actually just cut this one back really hard. And this is a nice bud because it's an outward facing bud as well. So we're just going to give that a nice cut there and put that into our bucket. You can prune quite hard at this time of year. The rose will be absolutely fine with that, and it will grow away quite strongly. The reason that we prune is so that you can get good growth in your rose in the year and that you can get more flowers. I'll just have a look at this one here. I can see a dormant bud just there, so that will come away. So I'm just going to cut that just there. So now our rose is looking good. It's got a little bit of dye back there, so we want to take that out as well. We don't want that brown bit on the plant. So I'm going to see if I can do a cut just below it. There we go. Now we've pruned our rose, so what we need to do now is we need to make sure that it doesn't have any leaves and things around about it, old leaves. We need to remove these and we'll put them into our bucket to go away to the recycling as well. And you can take any weeds that you see away round about, check it's nice and clear, and then we're going to get a handful of our granular rose feed like this, and we're just going to sprinkle that around the base of the plant. I can see another leaf there, I'll just take that away. And that goes all around about the base, and you can just work it in with your fingers. And then we're going to give it a good water. Like that. And then we're going to mulch around about it with some good garden compost. And that's really all you have to do at this time of year. How can you tell how far down to prune your hybrid tea roses? Well, a good way to do it is to get one of these rulers here, which is a 15cm ruler or 6-inch ruler, and that is how far down you're supposed to be cutting your hybrid tea roses. So about 15cm, 4 to 6 inches. And just hold it up against the stem of your rose there. You can see whether or not you are pruning to about the right height. So for hybrid tea roses, you're looking to reduce it to 4 to 6 inches from the base, about 10 to 15 centimetres. If it's a floribunda rose, you can do about 15 to 30 centimetres from the base, and if it's a shrub rose, you can reduce the stems by about a third. So I've got my prunings here in my bucket, and these are going to go into my green recycling bucket, which you might have at home, or you might go to your local tip where there's a green recycling point as well that you can put your rose clippings in. We don't leave them around the base of the plant or put them on the compost heap in case we spread disease. I've just pruned a rose and I want to make sure that I'm not passing on any disease to the next plant that I'm going to do. So I'm going to clean my secateurs with an antiseptic cleaning wipe that I've got from the kitchen, just to make sure that it's nice and clean before I move on to the next one. So I'm just going to give it a wipe. And after I've finished today, I can give it a proper clean inside before I put my tools away. When should you feed your roses? Well, in the springtime you should feed your roses just now after you've pruned them. I've just been using a rose granular fertiliser that's slow release. You can buy these in your garden centre or your local hardware store, or even in the supermarkets these days they have them. And you can feed now, and if it's a repeat flowering rose you want to do it again in the summertime. So after it's had that first flush of flowers you want to give it another feed, and then that should do it for the year. When should you be watering your roses? I've just given mine a water just now when I've pruned them for the first time this year before I put the mulch on. And then as the season goes on and it starts to warm up, you need to be looking to water your roses about once a week with a good watering can full. If the temperatures are really high and we have a really dry summer, then you need to be looking every 2 to 3 days just to see if they are drying out or not, but that's pretty rare where we are in Scotland, so you should get away with once a week. If you planted a new rose this year, then you want to be watering it a bit more often until it's established, so every 2 to 3 days just give it a check and see if it needs any water then. With these hybrid tea roses, we are really hard pruning them in the springtime, taking them back to 4 to 6 inches from the base, and this means that we will have good growth, we'll get nice long stems for flower arranging and some really good flowers. If you didn't cut it back quite as much as 4 to 6 inches, you would get probably more flowers, but they would be slightly smaller. That's me finished pruning my roses for today, and I'm now going to watch them grow over the next few months and get some flowers in June and July. They are definitely a learning curve, and every year I'm still finding out more and more about how to look after them properly and what works for me in my garden. I'll give you an update in the summertime about how my roses are doing. They will hopefully be looking really pretty with lots of beautiful flowers on them, and I will dehead them in the summer as they flower so that I will get repeat flowering later on in the season when it gets to about September time. I love growing my roses, which I use in biodegradable confetti, and I also use them in some of my arrangements as well. And they look absolutely beautiful, smell divine. They're really worth having a crack at growing in your own garden.